Loose Gadgies. Tuesday. We're in November already. We've got all sorts of fireworks going off. All sorts of questions about whether anyone should just be able to walk into a shop and buy a box of explosives. Which is, I had this debate with Kelsey over the weekend. Do you not think it's weird that anyone can walk into a supermarket and come out with a cardboard box full of explosives? Now, do you know what? I have never looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right. You don't need a license. You don't need a background check. And you could, if you wanted, open them all up, pour all the ingredients into one pile and blow something up, couldn't you, technically?
This is what bloke originally did.
Exactly. Guy Fawkes. So this is, an ounce of irony in there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah.
Well, aye. So I thought it was a fair point. But today, though, my head's been battered with all sorts of stuff. Trying to stay away from watching the news, and I find that I cannot. I need to know what's going on. And I've done a bunch of political leanings tests, right? Because I thought I'm interested to know, because there's all sorts of emotional quotient tests that test your EQ. There's IQ tests out there. There's all sorts of other tests about how you feel about this. And I don't mean them Facebook ones like which Star Wars character are you, or which are you Hugglepuff or Snuggle Biscuit, or whatever it is on Harry Potter. I haven't watched any of the Harry Potters or read the books. So, interestingly, some of them were American, so I discounted them because they started talking about states and between state and federal. Listen, I went, there's no point because that's not how it works here. So I boiled it down to 2 tests, right? Now, one of them said I was financially on the left, which is rubbish, and that I was socially libertarian, which...
For the people that don't know, when we say left and right, what does that mean, financially left?
I struggled. I struggled to understand what it was trying to tell me.
In simplistic terms, because
Well, one site called me a fascist because it believed that militarily, financially, that I believed that all money and all corporations should work together with the government for the sole purpose of control and making cash. And I was like, I don't remember answering that question, but apparently I'm one of them that believes that that these big companies and the government behind the scenes are all working together to gain control and all the money. And whereas on the left, it's all about socialism and making sure the ultimate application of socialism is that nobody owns anything. Right? So you will not own anything and you will be happy. This is Klaus, what's his face, from the World Economic Forum, who's leading us towards this ultimate plan where everything will be on subscription. Right? You won't own anything. You'll just work for it. You'll have the clothes you need, nothing more, the food you need, nothing more. Everybody has everything, but nobody has more than anyone else. And there's nothing more against human nature than that. Perhaps communism. Which is probably the next step right after that. And on the right, though, it's all about free market enterprise, right? Anybody who is capable of getting to the top should be allowed to, and they shouldn't be berated for doing so. Right? That's the difference. One is the state takes care of everyone and everybody has enough. On the right, the successful succeed. And it's an open market. And if you end up on the bottom of the pile, there is room for you to go and get yourself to the top, but it requires your effort, not the state's effort, to get you there. And now I'm more on the right. I think capitalism, fine. It's probably the closest thing to human nature, where we're all ultimately genetically selfish and all about procreation and making sure our genes survive over someone else's, right? If you want to boil it down.
I've got more meat than you and I've got more women than you.
Yeah, all of that stuff. And unless you've got something I want, I'm not interested in trading with you, right? And then, of course, it goes into monopolies, commissions, and all of that to ensure fair trade, etc., etc. So, and I thought, well, I'm definitely not on the left. If anything, anybody who declares themselves on the left when they're on the news, I end up swearing at, right? Because I can't find myself agreeing with anything. And if anyone's an extremist, it's usually them. And you can have a fascist either side, because that's not a fascist isn't someone who is on the right. A fascist is an implementation of their values, right? So strict implementation. I can't remember the exact definition off the top of my head, but it sounded like you had a guitar there.
No. Hit the spring.
So I'm at the point where I thought I haven't learned anything, because it turns out all of the questions are weighted as well, because somebody might decide that, oh, well, that's a left thing and that's a right thing. All of this is rubbish, so I just stopped doing it. And then it led me to thinking, well, who would I vote for and why am I voting for them? And then that led me down to a track of listening to some of these phone calls on these talk shows, and some of the people were ringing in and they couldn't give a real reason why they were voting. Oh, well, it's not the Tories. I said, well, that's not a real reason to vote. Oh, well, I'm voting whatever the opposite of them is. Right.
What? Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, me dad did. Me friends wouldn't forgive us if. All of these reasons, in my mind, aren't valid reasons. It means you haven't thought about it. Oh, well, it's just not them. Or I'm angry with them, so I'm going to vote against them. Well, right. You haven't ensured that the one you're voting for is any better, though, have you? You know, grass is always greener and that. So, I mean, you must. I've chatted for a solid 7 minutes there. I'm guessing you put a bit of thought into it, do you? Or even think about where you might be on the spectrum. You know, and the kind of things that are your core values.
Yeah, and that's the nail on the head. So we have some core values and beliefs, yeah? Mm-hmm. And mine are completely different to every political party. Yeah. Somewhere within my core beliefs and values, there are things that appeal to me in certain parties. They will never match.
Yeah.
They will never match.
Yeah,
so
I've learned this the hard way, yeah.
I'm left in a current situation asking myself, how are we currently doing versus the song and dance I'm being offered by the opposition who haven't been in a position of power for a while, and saying
12, 13 years.
Yeah, so you know, if you want to try and sell me some eggs, you're going to say they're great eggs, aren't you? But until I crack those eggs and see that they don't make a very good omelette, I don't know. So do I want the stale boiled eggs that we've currently got, or do I want a scrambled omelette potentially? And the honest answer is, I'm not sure.
Do you know what I've ended up doing?
Yeah.
Because the two main, there isn't really an opposition anymore, other than they just argue with each other. But there's no real opposition. There was a guy I watched on a podcast late last night, and he said, "Look, there's not a cigarette paper between them. There used to be a point where there was an issue that everyone cared about, and one party would say this is the answer, and then the other party would give a completely different answer. Would say no. This is the right way to fix that." And they go, "No, soz, this is the way it should be fixed." And you went for the one that fit with your values or closest to, right? But you had a clear choice. Now, it's like one homogenous large party. Then they're just all arguing with themselves, right? So, what I've found myself doing, other than watching an awful lot of Trump rallies, it's fascinating. He's just a fascinating bloke to watch. But I've been watching a lot of Reform UK. They're having these different sort of meetings around the country, and they record them, put them on their YouTube channel. Every now and again, YouTube throws one up and says, "Oh, do you want to watch this?" And I go, "Why not? Let's have a look. Why not?" And everything coming out of their meetings and all of their conferences is very solid. It's like, we are definitely going to do this, this, and this. Sod him, we are doing this. So I know exactly what they're about, and there's a solid answer, and it is completely different to everyone else's. And what I'm thinking is, we need something new. I think there's the appeal of something new. It's an untested thing. What they're saying sounds good. That sounds like it would solve the problem. That sounds like they've thought about it. Or here's some rebuttals on the things that the main parties are talking about. Look, that's not true because of this, this, and this. Here's some stats and whatnot. And it sounds like a bunch of ordinary people. None of them are MPs at the minute. Blah blah blah. So I just thought, you know what?
Just a question on the just a question on the two leaders, Simon. I don't know the answer. Yeah. I know the answer to one of them, but not the other one. So Keir Starmer, what's his background? I know what's Richie's background is, Richie Rich, but what's Keir Starmer's background?
Lawyer, Crown Prosecution Service.
Self-made, rich originally or not?
Yeah, well, he always talks about how his parents were. I think one of them was a doctor and something else, and yeah, he's self-made, but he came up through law.
Yeah.
And around the time of Jimmy Savile, he was in charge. And one interesting fact is, as a lawyer, he's never won a case. As in charge of Crown prosecution and all of that, he didn't win anything there either. And of course, you know the farce of Jimmy Savile. And he said, well, that wasn't me. That was the team. So, yeah, but you were leading the team. So the decisions ultimately filter upwards, don't they? So, yeah, but I wasn't involved in that. I ran the whole thing. That was just one side of the thing that I was running. Yeah, but it was a high-profile thing. You didn't get involved? No. There's nothing to do with me.
I suppose the problem is that my question was loaded into what appeals to my value system. Does which one is more likely to know how much a pint of milk costs?
Neither at this present time, because he has plenty of money. He's done a lot of the consultancy things and, directorships and...
Right, we're going to your favourite party, we're going to the Green Party then.
No. One of the websites did that. I told you that earlier on. It says, fill in this. Do you really want to find your party? Fill in this questionnaire and we'll tell you who it is. Yours is the Green Party. And I was like, is it? It isn't. I can tell you that. It absolutely isn't. I've checked.
Can't see on camera what he actually said regarding the answer. It revolved around something around his back area region.
Oh, honestly. Yeah, your mum's listening, so I'm not going to repeat that.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of words.
Honestly, I'm like, and going back to the day when we're shipbuilders and blah blah blah. It's a non-entity to me. Then we move into the sort of Margaret Thatcher and bits that Margaret did, and then I sort of let slip. I'm a closet Tony Blair fan.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, and because we were watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary and how Tony Blair helped him a little bit. Pluses and minuses was Tony Blair. Pluses and minuses for Richie. I think Richie's finding it difficult because of this flipping scandal. But I actually quite like Richie.
It's funny. I filled in a YouGov survey.
Yeah.
Was it early this morning or late last night? That asked me my opinion, like where would I rate him, and I gave him a 5. And I thought, you know what, I've got now against him, but he's done nothing standout for me. He says all the right things, but I've yet to see any actions.
You know what?
And anything that has come about because it was going to anyway. Like the drop in inflation was going to happen on its own, regardless.
They're like the problem with the Conservatives. They're like a Premier League football team who really wants to go somewhere, but are finding it difficult to find the right managers, so they just keep binning them and getting somebody else. and people are looking, going, have they found the right one yet? Does this one have parties when he's not supposed to? Does this one, it's just like...
I think the pair of them need a shock, and a third party needs to rise to the top, and not the Lib Dems, bunch of losers. They'll never get any. I mean, I say that having voted for them a couple of times back in the day.
We know the reality. But the reality is the election will be next year, and either Labour or Conservatives are going to be in power. and you just got to decide which one you want.
Yeah, and all the other parties are going to disrupt the vote.
Yeah,
which is going to mix things up, which might mean that Labour will win somewhere they don't normally because votes have gone to Reform or Reclaim, or they've gone over to Lib Dem or whatnot. Even though the Lib Dem leader keeps on doing these daft little animations, and it's 5 minutes to midnight for the Tories.
I don't even know who it is.
You, though. Sir Ed Davey.
I would have known. Go back 5-10 years, I would have known, but now I have no idea.
I mean, me folks used to vote for them all the time because the local councillor was one of the best we've ever had before they changed the way the councils are split up around here. But back in the day, I used to vote Lib Dem because locally they were always very good. And they haven't been in since I don't know when, but they always used to. But lately, I can understand apathy. I can understand you saying, look, there's no one worth voting for. So, well, but at least turn up and spoil your vote then. Yeah. And show and make a protest. I mean, I've hummed and hawed over that, doing that myself. Just turning up and just writing something cheeky on there.
I just see us going very similar to the American style. It's about the personality. It's not about the politics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the way we're going. Do you like Richie or do you like...
Well, that changed with Boris. The number of people who said, well, I voted for Boris, and then you get this political commentator who said, well, actually you didn't. You voted for your local candidate. And Boris just happened to be the leader of their party. So, no, I voted for them because I wanted to vote for him. Well, you technically don't elect a prime minister. So, well, that's not the point the caller was making. The point the caller was making was he drove them to switch from one side to his side and to vote because of him, regardless of who the councillor was. Just take the comment and shut your face. They voted for the personality because they believed when he said, I'll get that done. They went, you probably will,
this is where I don't know if we've had this discussion on air, but take any political party from the last 50 years, get their manifesto and see how much they delivered of it, and then make a judgment on, because they don't do it.
Nah.
And you sort of understand, I play devil's advocate, you sort of understand, because you create a manifesto based on as is, but then when you get into it, the to be is completely different. You've got this mess to clean up, and you realise that within your manifesto. So basically, a government is a bank, isn't it? It's got a certain amount of money, and it can't overspend, really. Not really.
And not one of them will plan for 10 years when you only vote every 5.
Yeah.
Not one of them's got a long-term plan. So if you want to build a nuclear power plant, which takes about 10 years, not one of them's going to do it. So it takes 10 years.
We talked here about end of next month, we'll get Kelsey back on. She's had a bit of a journey, and she's gone back into the military field. So do you want us to spend our money on our military or the money on our NHS? And imagine you can't have both. Because it's about money, it's about balancing the books. So something has to give here. We can't have this endless pot for the NHS and no pot for the army. It just doesn't work. So it's where you're going to spend your money.
And it's also about this 5-year term. The first year is a rush to do some lovely things. The 5th year is always a rush to cut taxes to gain popularity to get your vote for the next one. So I always feel like once someone's in, they're always just thinking about staying in. And there was a commentator on the other night saying, look, if you become a politician to get voted in every time, then you shouldn't be doing it. If you're becoming a politician because you feel you can change something, then that's a reason. Whether you get voted back in or not, and just take the risk on whether, look, this is either going to be popular or it's not, but I'm going to get it done. That's the way it should be. Whereas at the minute it's more about, right, we've got probably 1, maybe 2 years to do all the things that we want to do. Let's make sure all the unpopular shit's first so that people will forget about it in the last 3 years when we're leading up to the next election. So it's this cycle. I'm pretty sure the whole thing would change. If it was a 10-year election cycle, things would look very different.
Yeah.
When it's 5 years, there's just too much strategy involved in being re-elected, whereas I'd rather a party came in and went, we're going to fix all these things the way that we think they need to be fixed, and if we don't get back in, we don't get back in, but we're going to do it nonetheless.
So, just out of interest here, and we need to draw this conclusion, so let's just take Labour. They have an opposition secretary of something.
Oh yeah, it's always a shadow
what?
a shadow like a shadow leveling up secretary or a shadow chancellor and that kind of thing.
Why?
Because somebody asked this question. Because it means that each thing that the party in government puts out there needs to have its sort of opposite number in opposition to say, I think your policy's rubbish, and if I was in, I'd be doing this instead.
But it doesn't matter. They're not in they're not in power.
No,
So-
but they have to have an opposing. Although, as it turns out, at the minute they don't have an opposing role for every role that the government's made because it's changed a few. But for them, it's logical. And if you look at our system, even the way that it's laid out, they sit facing each other in debate. Whereas if you look at other parliaments, including the Scottish one, it's an assembly which is done in a semicircle where they all stand up and talk to the speaker. Whereas ours is more combative and adversarial. So we have an adversarial parliament. I mean, they don't even do that over in America. Theirs is an assembly where they'll have a semicircle in the Senate and the.
It doesn't make logical sense to me because you're not doing now for 5 or 10 years, as we just said. You're not going to be doing it.
It seemed entirely useless, other than to have a voice that speaks against that other voice.
And they get paid for it. They get paid for it.
Because it's technically a shadow cabinet. I'm like, well, is it?
Yeah.
It just means that if there's a new show on, when they bring that cabinet minister on, you're the person they bring in to speak on the opposite side. That seems to be its only function. Having watched a lot of the debates on YouTube, most of it's just it's back scratching and insults. And I don't think our system really works in terms of the way you debate things. But hey ho, well.
Hey ho. Oh, there's a clue for one of my questions.
Oh yeah, we're talking about hoes, aren't we? Hoes, ho ho ho. You know, the Christmas kind, not the lady kind. Anyway, not the lady of the night. So, comments, questions, opinions, lock them in down below. If you enjoyed the content, give us a like. Best way to support us, completely free. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. But until Thursday, take care.